Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. I just wanted to share this video with you today to show you this dress that I've made, this lovely little summer dress. I took the pattern from one of my old dresses, I took it all apart and I recreated the pattern because I just loved it. I loved the fit of it and everything. So I hope you get something out of the video. I think it's a really nice one for anybody who's just starting with their sewing journey. So here is the original dress. It's a very simple retro style A-line dress. As you can see laid down here, it's got a trim along the bottom and it doesn't have any sleeves. Inside the dress we have a lining for the bodice part, and you can see that the rest of the dress is just sewn in panels from the inside. I love this dress and it's been really heavily worn. As you can see, it's definitely seen better days. To begin with, I get my unpicker and I start to unpick all of the seams for the dress. I'm not going to lie, this takes a painstakingly long time to do. It took me hours, but it was well worth it. The idea is to deconstruct the entire garment and to take a pattern from the pieces. So once I've finished it all, once I've got it all unpicked, I ironed all my pieces out. And then I laid it onto paper and I redrew all the pieces out. Here's all the pieces on my bed. Here's my cat. I like to use my bed as a table. Just in this top corner here, you can see all the lining pieces for the bodice part, because I also want a lining on my new dress. So once I'm happy with all my pieces and I've got them all ironed out nicely, I pin them all to a sheet of pattern drafting paper and I trace them all out. When you come to do this part, you may find once you've cut out your paper pieces that the fabric might have stretched a little bit when you've unpicked the original garment. So it is a good idea to just quickly measure all the pieces and make sure that all the seams line up nicely. You can see here when I've come to cut out the paper pattern, I've actually added an extra inch because I wanted it a little bit longer. Here's my lovely fabric. It's a cotton crepe fabric and I just think it's really pretty. It's really nice for summer. So as before, you are taking your pattern pieces and you're laying them out on the fabric and pinning them down. When you're pinning your pattern to a cotton fabric, you need to make sure that the centre back and the centre front run with the grains. Like you can see, it's going straight across the fabric rather than diagonal. This is so the garment sits nicely and you can have a nice finish on the edges rather than it being a flared finish. Again, it does take a really long time to pin and cut out, but take your time because it's so important that you get it nice and neat. Once I was happy with all my pieces, I started to take all the pattern bits off and I decided to construct the lining part first. I lined all of the seams up and I reattached them all with the pins to construct the garment piece, and I took it to my sewing machine. I thought it'd be good to start with this part first because once it was all together I could just do like a little quick fitting just to make sure that the pattern was all right and it fitted me nice. When you're matching your seams up, make sure that you put your fabric the right sides together just to make sure that you get a good finish. You don't want to accidentally sew the wrong side of the fabric to the right side of the fabric because that'd look really silly, wouldn't it? It does take a little while, this part, but it's definitely worth taking your time and making sure that it's all lined up nicely and neatly. So when you do come to sew, your sewing goes really nicely because all your pattern's together nicely. So you should have something that looks a little bit like this once you've done your sewing. So I just quickly tried it on just to make sure it fitted me. And then I turned to doing the main part of the dress after that. You can see on the inside we've got these curved seams. What I'm going to do is press these seams down with an iron, and I will do that on the main part of the dress as well, just to make sure that the seams sit nicely. So the same as before, just reconstructing the main part of the garment now, just exactly how we've just done with the lining part. And then we'll take it to the sewing machine. Once I've sewn all the seams up, I'm going to then go over them with the overlocker just to make sure the edges are nice and neat. The front of the garment has got 3 panels. The main front part of the dress is like a larger panel, and then on the back it's 4 panels, and we've got a seam that goes down the back. Obviously that's going to be open because that's where the zip's going to go. So I just find it easy to construct the front part of the dress first, and then I construct the two backside panels, and then I add all of them together and then go back to the sewing machine. It might be good to note that if you are planning on doing this sort of project where you're taking a garment apart and remaking it, make sure that you're going to remake it in the same type of fabric that the original garment was made out of. Like, for example, if you're going to make a shirt, make sure that you make it out of a cotton or like a shirting type fabric. Don't do it out of a stretchy fabric, because obviously different fabrics work differently. And vice versa. If you take apart a garment that's made of a stretchy fabric, you need to use that pattern on another stretch fabric and not a cotton that won't move. So moving on, we're going to have a invisible zip in this garment because I think they look really nice. So as you can see, I'm just lining up the zip along the edge of the back panel that's going to be open. And if you can see, there's like a groove. That's where you need to stitch on the zip. The idea is you're going to be sewing as close to the teeth as you can from the inside, and then when you turn it round, the teeth sit literally just on the edge of the seam, so when it's zipped up you can't really see it. Just another quick fit in. This is what it's going to look like. Obviously I've not put any of the finishes on yet. I've not put any of the trims on, and the lining hasn't been attached either, but this is a general idea of how the fit will be. And obviously I needed to just make sure that it fitted nicely with the zip. So here I'm just going over all of the seams with the overlocker because I'm really happy with the fit of everything. So I just wanted to make sure that inside had a nice finish and the seams weren't going to fray easily. If you don't have an overlocker, what you can do is you can use the zigzag stitch to stop the fabric coming undone. And when we've done that, we're back to the iron and we're just going to press all of the seams nicely so that they all sit nicely. We've got a nice finish on the fabric. Then when we've done that, we're going to add the lining part. So I do this by having the main garment turn the right way around, and then I get the lining part and I turn it inside out so the right sides of the fabric match together, and I pin it into place before I sew it. It takes a little while and you have to have a little tug about with the fabric just to make sure that all the seams match up all neatly. You want all of the seams and everything to be matching up exactly so that, so you don't make the garment go out of shape or anything like that. So you get a better idea here. This is where we've pinned it all, and you can see the back parts are open. This is where the zip will go eventually in between the garment and the lining part. So we're just going to stitch all around the neckline. This is just how I like to attach a lining to a garment. I like to start with the neck. Then once that's all neatly in place, I just laying it back down again, and you'll see that this particular neckline comes into a V shape. So what we need to do is make a slight incision on the actual point of the V, and then when we turn the lining the right way round, we also need to do a line of stitching which attaches the lining to the seam allowance, and you do it just on the inside of the neckline. And what that does is it makes the neckline sit really nice and neatly, so it pulls all the lining inwards and you just get a really lovely finish. It's really nice. So you can just see here where the seam is for the lining and the front of the garment, and you just want to sew on the inside where you can just see where my finger is, and you're sewing it onto the lining, and it's going to attach just to the seam allowance and not to the front part of the fabric. You can see here like what a nice finish it will make. As I've come to do my editing, I've realised I've just completely missed out how I did the armholes. So basically, I picked out this trim, this lovely bias binding, was to go on the bottom of the dress, and I also did this round the armholes as well. You'll see in a little while as well, I also went over the neckline again. So it was absolutely completely pointless me showing you what I'd just done before with the stitching, because I ended up just going over it with a bias binding anyway. But it did look really nice in the end. I was really happy with the finish of it. I really love using bias binding. You can either buy it on a roll or you can make your own. I'll probably show you that in another video. I actually bought this part, but you're just pinning it into place and you're stitching over it, and you want to make sure you stitch both sides of it so that none of it comes undone. I made a bow at the last minute just out of a square piece of fabric. I folded in half and stitched up, and I added some more of the bias binding to it, and I added a little button into the middle of it, and yeah, voila! I had a bow to go on the front of the garment. It was really pretty. It was a really nice touch. So I was very, very nearly finished by this point. I found a really nice necklace out and a cute little cardigan to accept. So to add the trim on, I just spread the dress out on my bed, and I just pinned it into place, pinned the trim into place. I had to keep going and measuring it to make sure that it was the same distance from the bottom all the way around, because I wanted it to go on nicely. And I just stitched the top and the bottom of it, and voila, we have a beautiful summer dress. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you got something out of the video.